Hello, friends. I fear I have a confession to make, and it's that I want to read more classics. I promise I'm not going to become pretentious. I'm not going to say, "Oh, you don't actually read if you're not reading the classics." I'm still going to be trash, but I'm also so curious and nosy, and I want to get in on all these references in current media to classic media that just currently go over my head. The problem with that is there are so many classics and it's hard to narrow it down. Also, another problem is my TBR is already 50 books, and I just recently went through and culled it. So, 50 books and growing, it's not really ever going to get any smaller than that. Adding a bunch of classics to it isn't going to give me the dopamine rush I want of crossing it off my list. So, I was like, want to know what I should do? I should find one of those scratch off classics posters so that every time I finish a classic, I get to scratch it off, and that'll motivate me to pick those up more often. Because while I do want to read them, it's not the top of my priority list because I know that the likelihood of me enjoying it as much as, say, another author that I've read before and I loved might not be as high. So it's not what I'm reaching for, and I want to make a conscious effort to read more. So I was looking at these scratch off posters. First of all, why are they all like 100 books? Also, all of them had like War and Peace, which respectfully I am not going to read. I am going to have to become a very different person to want to read that book. And a lot of them, because they're putting 100 books, have newer releases. And classic is very loosely defined. There is no definitive scale for what makes something a classic and what doesn't. So I was looking for something very specific. So I decided that the best way to get what I want, instead of compromising on something that I'm not going to fully use or love, is to make it myself. Because I can never relax. I get an idea in my head and I have to do it. So I spent too many hours on Canva and I made this. You might be looking at this and go, Bailey, some of them don't have the little scratch off things. That's true. I did, in fact, make this poster with things that I have already read on it because dopamine, we've talked about this. Also, there are a few books on here that I have read, but I didn't scratch off because it has been years. I read them so long ago, I'm not counting them. I'm only talking books that I have read in the past 2 or 3 years. So, a little bit about this. I made this on Canva. These are scratch off stickers that I got on Amazon. And the book covers are the Penguin cloth bound classics, I believe they're called. I think that these are gorgeous covers. But I came into a dilemma while making this. Not all the books I wanted on this poster had covers in this collection. So I did make my own covers in this style. I copied them. As you can probably tell by how few of these are actually scratched off, I was not an English lit major in college. This is not my domain. It has never been my domain. In college, I majored in environmental science and policy with an almost minor in physics. I'm actually so mad about this still to this day. I was one class away from the minor, and it was physics 2, the second introductory level physics course I didn't take. But I did do 2 semesters of graduate research as an undergrad, but it's okay. It's okay. What I was saying is that I am not used to reading stuff like this, especially the older things. I find the language hard to read. I find it hard to comprehend. And I don't want anyone taking this out of context and putting it in an anti-intellectualism YouTube commentary video about book talk in booktube. I think that it's actually really okay to admit that you have a hard time reading difficult books, and acknowledging that they're hard, I do not think deserves the criticism that it gets. The girl who was reading Pretty Woman and was like, there's so many characters, it's hard to keep track of them because it doesn't say who said what. I fear she had a valid point. If you are not used to that, it is difficult. And I don't think we should shame people for trying it and admitting that it's difficult. I have a lot of strong feelings and I'm feeling them all right now about this. Maybe I need to take a deep breath. So I'm going to play some clips of me putting this together and tell you about the books I have on here and the reasons I put them on here. So I have David Copperfield on here because Demon Copperhead was my favorite book last year, and I think it's only fair I read them one after another and burn myself out. I also have great expectations on here because I read online it was a good Charles Dickens, and I just have high hopes. I have high hopes for him. I think I will like it. I have A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I read this book and I loved it. And because I loved A Picture of Dorian Gray so much, I put The Canterville Ghost on here. I saw maybe one singular person on Reddit say that it is kind of more in style with Picture of Dorian Gray than some of his other books. I put To Kill a Mockingbird because I didn't read it. It was not required reading for me in high school. I feel like I should read it. I do know that there is criticisms for it not maybe being good and it being white saviory and potentially racist. I'm going to read it with those criticisms in mind. By Jane Austen, I have Emma and I have Pride and Prejudice. I heard really good things about both of them, honestly. I think I have read that Emma is a little bit more readable than Pride and Prejudice. So I think I'm going to start on that. I'm going to be so honest with you guys. I am very scared of Pride and Prejudice. I am not a Regency girl. I tend to not like historical fiction, so I am scared of the setting for this one. But it is so popular in the public consciousness right now. I feel like I want to have that context. I have The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Read that one, incredible. I want to read more by her, but I am limiting myself to two per author. So I have We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I am a weird lit fic girl, and I feel like they're gonna revoke my card because I haven't read this book yet. And yeah, it's something that's been on my list forever, and I just haven't read it. Next, I have Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I feel like these are just classic monster books. They are the blueprint. They are so popular still to this day. I want to read them. I want to know what they're about. I also have The Phantom of the Opera, simply because I can't think of her name right now. Really cool English lit major who lives in Canada said that it is very good, very readable, good for people who just haven't gotten into classics. Next, I have Lolita. One of those things. It's big in the public consciousness. There are some really bad movies made based off of it, and I want to read the original work. Wuthering Heights, I purely read this because one of my coworkers who I love and cherish, she told me to read The Favorites and I read it, and then she said that it was her favorite book of right now because Wuthering Heights is her favorite book of all time. And I was like, "Oh, I am missing context for The Favorites." So I was like, "Oh, let me read that." And she's like, "Oh my god, it's my favorite book of all time." And she's like primarily a fantasy girl. So I was thinking it was going to be maybe more digestible than it was. I struggled through this book. Next, I have Little Woman. People love this book. People cherish this book. I've never read it. I'm not confident I can tell you what it's about. I also have Jane Eyre, another book that people love. I've heard that this one is a little bit difficult to read, so I am planning on reading this maybe to the end of this poster's life. I have Orlando by Virginia Woolf. People say that this book is very readable, and I haven't read a Virginia Woolf before, so I want to. East of Eden I have on here. This one wasn't highly and widely recommended when I was looking through like classics for beginners, but I read the synopsis and it sounds really good and I'm really intrigued. My last row are kind of newer books. I have Lord of the Flies, which I read in middle school but want to reread. I have The Great Gatsby, which I never read. It was never required reading for me. I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of references with that one specifically because I've also never seen the movie. I have Fahrenheit 451. I read this book in high school, I believe. It might have been middle school. I can't remember when it was assigned. Loved it. I was the only person in the class who loved this book. I loved this book. And it's one that I've just been planning to reread for forever. So I put it on here. So maybe I actually pick it up one day. I have 1984. I don't think this was required reading for me. I have vague recollections of reading this, but I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in this other than what I've picked up on by just existing in the world at this current time. Same for Brave New World. I actually get Brave New World and 1984 confused in my brain. They are actually the same book to me, and I know they're not. And that makes me think I read them in close proximity to each other. But despite creating my Goodreads in 2014, I did not keep it updated throughout my youth. Okay, I want to talk about the 3 books that I have read on here so far and give you the yes no maybe on if this is a good classic to start with if you have read less than 25 classics. That is going to be my threshold for this series. Okay, first is The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is the first classic I read since leaving high school. Embarrassing. No, it's not embarrassing. It's not. It's okay. You don't have to read classics. I think that this is an incredible classic to start with. It was super easy to comprehend. I wasn't struggling with the language, I wasn't struggling with the style of dialogue. It was very easy to understand, incredibly engaging, and truly stood up to the test of time. I will say, my experience with listening to audiobooks for classics has not been fantastic. And that's because a lot of them are older audiobooks, so the quality is just not as good. And I feel like it reminds you that you're reading an old book. So for all of these, I would recommend doing like reading on your Kindle or your Kobo or a physical book and maybe not doing the audiobook, or if you want the audiobook, doing them both at the same time. I don't think I would do an audiobook just straight up for these. And I'm an audiobook girl. The next thing I read was The Haunting of Hill House. This one I read fairly recently, and I am going to be honest, it was a little bit more difficult than I expected. It wasn't super hard, I wasn't struggling to comprehend it. It's just I was very aware that I was reading a story the entire time I was reading it. I didn't get lost in it like I do other books, and I think it was the style of dialogue. I was also very aware that I was reading a book because I was thinking about the Netflix series A Haunting of Hill House, which I love with my whole heart. It is one of the best things Netflix has ever put out. But there are aspects of that show that were not in this book, which you might be taking your little clips and putting it in your anti-intellectualism video to be like, oh my god, she didn't like this book because it didn't match the TV show. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just being so astronomically clear right now. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I was looking for these things. It's not that I didn't like the story, it's that I was distracted from the story. And specifically, what I'm talking about is the Red Room, which was a huge aspect of the show. And I also read another book recently that I can't think of the name of right now that was clearly inspired by The Haunting of Hill House. There were some very clear aspects that were pulled from it, and it also had a red room. So, because two modern pieces of media referenced a red room in reference to The Haunting of Hill House, God forbid I assume that it's in the story. It wasn't, and the red room was a representation of a different part of the story, and I get it. I get it. It just distracted me that it wasn't there because I was constantly waiting for it. It's like when you read a thriller after reading a spoiler, so you're just waiting for that thing to pop up, and it didn't. And I found it distracting, and I also found it so interesting. Lastly, on here of books that I read recently was Wuthering Heights. I read that directly after reading The Haunting of Hill House because I enjoyed The Haunting of Hill House so much, and I was like, okay, I'm ready for another classic. I fear I did not enjoy it. I do not think that this is a good classic to start with. I had a lot of trouble with comprehension for this in the style of them speaking, just the dialogue in general, and also the style it was written. Emily Bronte will take 14 sentences to say something that could be said in one. And I found that very tedious to read. And I thought I was down for that. I thought I was down for that because I love purple prose. I love flowery writing. I am learning that I love modern purple prose. I have a more difficult time with older books, and that Wuthering Heights is an older book. So I think that that one might be better when you're kind of more into classics and more used to reading books from that era. I am not, so I found it hard. Anyways, that is all. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if any of the books on this poster you think I should read next, you think I would enjoy and find it not easily comprehensible, but easier than Wuthering Heights, please let me know. I kind of don't know where to go next. Obviously, the bottom row are the most modern books, so would be probably the easiest to comprehend, but I want to not read newest to oldest exactly. I want to look around, see what everyone has to offer.